It's still a bit dirty, Mom. You need to keep scrubbing the floor. I want it spotless when my guests arrive, said Emma, the youngest daughter of Lana, with a tired smile. Lana straightened up and looked at her daughter. I'm almost done, dear, she said. Just then, Emma's phone rang. It was Michael, her older brother. Even though she wanted to ignore it, she answered the call with a frown, not wanting to hear his voice so early in the day. Emma stepped away slightly, not wanting her mother to know it was Michael on the other end of the call. What do you want? She muttered, trying to keep her voice low. From the other side of the house, Lana kept cleaning, unaware of the call. I want to talk to Mom. Is she awake? Michael asked. No, she's not awake yet. I'm making her tea to bring to her room, Emma replied, controlling her breathing so her agitation wouldn't show. Okay, don't wake her. I'll call later, Michael said in a tired tone. I miss her so much, and I want to talk to her. Emma grimaced, knowing her brother would call again later that day, a day when the last thing she wanted was an intrusion from her mother's favorite. She hung up without saying goodbye and returned to the living room. As she walked, she tried to compose herself and not let the conversation affect her plans. She wasn't going to let Michael ruin her day or the effort she had put into preparing everything. Meanwhile, in his office, Michael was facing a mountain of papers and documents that demanded his attention. The phone kept ringing, and his schedule was packed with important appointments. He had meetings with key clients, and every minute of his day seemed meticulously planned. Despite the workload and the palpable stress in the air, there was a constant worry he couldn't shake. He needed to call his mother again. Every time he looked at the clock, he reminded himself of the promise to call later, no matter how busy he was. As Michael tried to concentrate on the contract in front of him, Lucy, his secretary, knocked gently on the door. Mr. Michael, your first client is in the waiting room, ready to see you, she announced with a calm but firm voice. Michael looked up from the pile of papers, nodded at Lucy, and adjusted his tie before standing up, preparing to meet the client. All right, send him in, he said calmly, ready for the meeting. Michael quickly organized his desk, stacking the documents in one corner with precise movements, putting away scattered pens in the drawer, and aligning the small stack of business cards he always kept handy. He wanted everything to be immaculate when the client entered, as a sign of respect and professionalism. Finally, he took a deep breath and put on a polite smile, just as the door opened to allow the visitor in. The client entered hesitantly and stopped next to Michael's desk. He was an older man, with deep wrinkles and eyes that reflected the weight of many bitter experiences. Good morning, Mr. Michael. My name is Frank Anderson, said the man with a trembling voice, full of concern. Michael stepped forward and extended his hand, shaking it firmly. Good morning, Mr. Anderson. Please, have a seat, he said, guiding him to a chair. Thank you, Mr. Michael. I need your help. I've lost my life savings. Someone took advantage of me because I'm an old man, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. What little I had saved for my retirement is gone. Michael listened intently, his face reflecting empathy and determination. I'm very sorry, Mr. Anderson. No one deserves to go through something like this. I promise I'll do everything in my power to recover your money. I won't let this scam go unpunished, Michael said with conviction, placing a comforting hand on the elderly man's shoulder. Mr. Anderson nodded slightly, his eyes finally finding a glimmer of hope. Determined to seek justice for Frank Anderson, Michael began planning the necessary actions to correct this injustice, demonstrating his firmness and commitment to defending his client's rights. The interview lasted more than an hour, during which the lawyer asked all the necessary questions to fully understand the case presented by Mr. Anderson. He showed genuine empathy and paid attention to every detail, taking meticulous notes about the situation. Frank described how he had been scammed, providing details about the man who had defrauded him and the methods used. When the meeting concluded, Michael asked him to gather all the papers and documents that could help solve the case. With a slight smile, Michael bid farewell to Mr. Anderson, promising to do everything possible to help him recover what was lost. Mr. Anderson left feeling calmer and more hopeful, sensing that he was in good hands and confident that with Michael's help, he could achieve justice. The rest of Michael's morning was filled with interviews and complex cases that required his full attention. Every client that day brought new challenges, forcing him to use all his legal experience and skills. By midday, after a tiring series of meetings, Michael felt the need to disconnect a little and called his sister, intending to speak with their mother. However, after a few unsuccessful attempts with no answer, he decided to return to the office, convinced that his sister was busy. Meanwhile, at their mother's house, Emma saw the phone ringing incessantly. With a mix of exasperation and mockery, she said to herself, "What a nuisance, always trying to be the loving son." She had always noticed Michael's insistence on staying in touch, but at that moment, busy with her own tasks, she decided not to answer. Finally, when the phone stopped ringing, Emma took the opportunity to direct her irritation toward her mother. Despite having been cleaning all morning, she impatiently said, "Mom, you still haven't washed the dishes. You need to hurry. There's still a lot of laundry to iron." Lana, with her hands still sore from scrubbing the floor, sighed and headed to the kitchen, resigned to meeting her daughter's demands. She knew that any attempt to argue would only result in confrontation, so she silently continued with the household chores while Emma continued doing her nails. Emma's treatment of her mother resembled that of a dissatisfied boss with an employee more than that of a daughter with her mother. Lana, feeling distressed, couldn't understand why she was being treated this way. She had always been a dedicated and loving mother, giving her time and effort to raise her children as best as she could. However, at this stage of her life, she found herself dealing with her daughter's contempt and impatience. The emotional pain weighed as much as the physical, and she wondered when their relationship had lost the respect and tenderness it once had. Not satisfied with giving her more tasks, Emma informed her mother of her plans for the evening. "Mom, tonight you can't leave your room. My new boyfriend is coming over, and I don't want him to see you. You can only come out if I call you, understood?" Lana, with tears welling up in her eyes from her daughter's harsh words, could only respond, "Whatever you say, dear." The hours passed, and night finally fell. Emma meticulously prepared herself, dressing elegantly, putting on perfume, and applying makeup delicately to welcome her boyfriend to the house. When Alex arrived, she invited him to make himself comfortable. As he looked around, he saw the house was immaculate, sparkling, and perfectly organized, leading him to praise Emma's effort with admiration in his eyes. Emma replied, "I love keeping the house in order. I want you to feel comfortable," hoping that the night would mark the beginning of something even more special between them. A small noise from the kitchen interrupted the pleasant moment. Alex, curious, looked over and saw Lana moving with difficulty, busy with something. "Emma, is that your mother? Please introduce me to her," said Alex with a friendly smile. Seeing that her mother hadn't followed her request to stay locked in her room, Emma felt a wave of anger and deep discomfort. However, she hid her annoyance in front of her boyfriend. "My mother? No, she's my housekeeper," Emma responded, trying to stay calm and forcing a smile. Lana, who had heard the conversation perfectly, lowered her head with immense sadness in her heart. Her thoughts raced, remembering moments from the past and feeling a deep loneliness. Her breathing became heavier, as if every beat of her heart hurt. She remained silent and continued preparing her dinner, struggling to hold back the tears and trying not to draw more attention. Every movement in the kitchen became mechanical, while her soul sank into a sea of melancholy. Alex, although perplexed by the response, didn't ask any more questions, but the awkward atmosphere became palpable. Lana relived in her mind the moment when she had had a small fall at home. Michael's concern for his mother's health had been enormous and evident from the start. Desperate to make sure she was all right, he had arranged for his sister, Emma, to move in with their mother to take care of her. At that time, Emma wasn't working or studying. Without hesitation, Michael had offered to cover all the household expenses. Never in his worst nightmares had he imagined that his mother would be subjected to such treatment. Every insult, every slight had become recurring and painful memories for Lana. The disdain in Emma's eyes felt like daggers piercing her heart. She felt her soul withering under the weight of humiliation, wrapped in a deep sadness that choked her spirit and consumed her joy of living. At that moment, Lana desperately longed to hear the comforting voice of her son, Michael. However, she was aware that Emma had always opposed her having her own mobile phone. This refusal forced her to depend on her daughter's phone, a dependency that made her feel even more vulnerable and trapped. She knew she couldn't approach Emma to ask for it. The mere idea of facing her daughter's contempt paralyzed her. Deep down, she sensed that even if she had mustered the courage to ask, Emma would have denied her without hesitation. That desperation, a mixture of helplessness and sadness, made her feel like a prisoner in her own home, adding layers of anguish to her already tormented spirit. The memories of happier times were fading, leaving her with an emptiness that seemed to engulf every small glimmer of hope. However, God saw everything, and there would be consequences. The next morning, Michael left early for the office, with 4 very special clients waiting for his advice. Each one was facing very different problems, and Michael, true to his commitment to those seeking justice, was determined to help them. But as he prepared his coffee at home, a flood of memories washed over him. He remembered the mornings of his childhood, when his mother used to make him breakfast before school. He remembered how she cut the toast just the way he liked it. These moments, filled with love and dedication, made him smile. The warmth of those memories led him to promise himself that he would call his sister again to check on his mother. His heart was torn between his professional responsibilities and his desire to protect and care for his mother. After working non-stop for a few hours, Michael informed his secretary that he would be stepping out for lunch but would return soon. He walked to the corner restaurant, a small bistro known for its cozy atmosphere and homemade dishes. When he arrived, he greeted the waiter and ordered the dish of the day, a beef stew with potatoes that reminded him of home. As he quickly ate, the memories continued to flood his mind. He thought about his mother and how Emma was probably dealing with the same emotions he was. Taking advantage of the moment away from the office's hustle, he decided to call his sister. His heart pounded a bit faster than usual as he dialed Emma's number. The ringing echoed in his ear, each sound increasing his anxiety. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Emma answered with a surprised and somewhat distant voice. "Hello, Michael, what do you need?" "I'm busy." "Hi, sis. How are you? I want to know how Mom is. Can you pass her the phone?" he asked. Emma, feeling uncomfortable, replied, "She can't talk right now. She's taking a nap, but she's fine. Why are you so worried?" she said, trying to avoid him calling again in the next few days. A bit puzzled by his sister's response, Michael said, "I just miss Mom, that's all." Emma, trying to convince him further, responded with a slightly annoyed tone, "Don't worry, I'm taking good care of her." Instead of calming him, his sister's answer only increased his anxiety. He felt helpless, unable to be close to his mother and ensure himself that she was all right. Nevertheless, he decided not to push further and trusted that Emma was indeed taking care of everything. With a sigh, he hung up and tried to focus on finishing his lunch. What Michael didn't know was that his sister's intentions were far from genuine. While Emma projected a facade of confidence and security, the reality at home was quite different. The truth was that she felt overwhelmed and resentful of the responsibility she had taken on, but this harsh reality couldn't remain hidden forever, as an unexpected event was about to reveal the situation and make everything clear. That afternoon, on his way home from work, Michael couldn't stop thinking about his mother. Anxiety overwhelmed him, and his nostalgia grew with each step. "I need to see Mom. I need to hug her," he repeated to himself over and over. The memory of her warm embraces and comforting words constantly accompanied him. "I can't wait any longer. I have to see her right now," he decided. He looked at the clock and saw that his workday was over. What could be more important now than giving my dear mother a hug? He said firmly. Excited by the surprise visit, Michael quickened his pace toward his car. I know this will make her very happy. After all, mothers deserve all our love and care, he thought as his heart beat faster, filled with anticipation and excitement for the reunion. During the drive to his mother's house, Michael couldn't get the image of his mother smiling at him out of his mind. He started the car, and as he drove, his thoughts wandered between childhood memories and thoughts of how much good it would do for his mom to see him. Suddenly, though he was eager to arrive, he decided to make a special stop. He remembered a bakery near his mother's house that they used to visit together when he was a child. Without a second thought, he turned at the next corner and headed toward the shop. A chocolate cake would be perfect, it's her favorite, he thought with a smile. When he arrived, the sweet and familiar aroma of freshly baked cakes enveloped him. He chose the most beautiful cake he saw and bought it with great satisfaction. He knew that this gesture would delight his mother and make the reunion even more special. With the cake secured in the back seat, he resumed his journey, his heart even more full of excitement and hope. Every red light and obstacle along the way seemed to stretch the distance between them a little longer. Just a little more, he said to himself anxiously, as the fatigue of the day began to fade with the anticipation of the reunion. Finally, he arrived at the neighborhood where he had grown up. He parked the car in front of his mother's house and approached the gate. "Mom, it's me," he shouted, clapping his hands in hopes that she would appear with her warm smile. But there was no response. Michael frowned and called again, this time louder. "Mom, it's me, Michael." The silence was his only answer. Anxiety began to grow in his chest. Where could she be? He thought, trying to stay calm. He looked around, hoping to see some sign of movement inside the house, but it seemed deserted. He raised his voice again, this time with a knot in his throat. "Mom! Emma! Can you hear me?" The lack of response began to take on a sinister tone in his mind. What had started as a pleasant surprise soon turned into an unsettling sense of alarm. Fear began to take hold of him. What if something happened to them? He thought desperately, feeling his heart beat faster. Dark thoughts began to invade his mind, transforming his initial excitement into a growing sense of danger. At that moment, he remembered that he had a spare set of keys to the house in his car. Fearing the worst, he grabbed them and opened the door without thinking twice. He ran inside, his mind full of dark thoughts, imagining that something terrible might have happened. The eerie silence in the house only heightened his anxiety. However, what he saw upon reaching the living room was far worse than anything his mind had imagined. There, in front of him, was his mother, on her knees scrubbing the floor with a small brush, as if she were a servant, while his sister Emma watched indifferently, like a spectator. In shock and indignation, Michael dropped the cake to the floor, his voice cracking as he shouted, "Mom, why are you on your knees scrubbing the floor?" His mother raised her head, her eyes red and her face marked by years of accumulated exhaustion. Emma barely blinked at her brother's outburst, her indifferent attitude igniting a fury in Michael that he could barely contain. The tension in the room was palpable, each second adding an unbearable weight to the already charged atmosphere. "How is this happening?" Michael yelled as he rushed to help his mother stand, holding her gently while saying, "Mom, what's going on? You never treated us like servants. You've always been a strong and independent woman. Why are you doing this?" His mother lowered her head in shame and barely murmured through sobs, "Dear, I have no choice. Emma doesn't want to work, and I'm too old to argue with her." Michael felt a stab in his heart upon hearing his mother's words. He hugged her tightly, trying to comfort her. "Mom, don't worry. I promise I'll take care of everything." Turning to his sister, his voice filled with rage, he demanded, "Emma, why are you doing this? How can you treat Mom this way?" But she remained impassive, not even lifting her gaze from her freshly painted nails. She knew that what Michael had seen was undeniable and chose to stay silent. Desperate, Michael turned back to his mother and asked, "Mom, please, tell me what's really going on here. Why are you letting this happen to you?" His mother, with tears in her eyes, gathered what little courage she had left and began to speak. "Son, Emma forces me to do all the household chores. She locks me in my room, and when she brings her boyfriends over, she always tells them I'm the maid." Michael felt a wave of indignation consume him, but at the same time, a deep pain seeing his mother so vulnerable. "How long has this been going on, Mom? Why didn't you tell me anything before?" His mother closed her eyes, trying to hold herself together, and whispered, "I didn't want to worry you, son. I didn't want to be a burden to you." He hugged her tightly and said, "Mom, you will never be a burden to me. You're my mother, and I'll always be here to protect you." Taking a deep breath to calm his anger and give his mother confidence, he continued, "Mom, this ends now. You don't have to worry about anything anymore." He said with determination, "I'll make sure this woman gets what she deserves. From now on, everything will change. I won't let you suffer any longer." His mother, still crying, felt immense relief upon hearing his words. She hugged him tightly, grateful to know she was no longer alone. With eyes filled with fury, Michael turned to Emma and said firmly, "Now I understand why you wanted to live with Mom. It wasn't to take care of her, but to exploit her while I covered all your expenses. You're despicable. Who in their right mind could do something like this to their own mother?" Emma, stung by her brother's words, decided it was time to defend herself. "It's easy for you, Michael. You work, you're successful, and you can do whatever you want with your life. But me? I have to live with an old woman. Can you imagine how hard that is for me? All I'm doing is surviving," she said with a mix of coldness and indifference, as if there were no bond with that older woman. Michael approached Emma with a penetrating look and said firmly, "You will never do this again. From today, I won't pay any of your expenses. How can you be so ungrateful? Mom cared for us with devotion when we were sick, gave us her unconditional love, and took us to school every day. You're an ingrate. I don't want to see you near Mom ever again." Emma tried to confront Michael, even raising her hand to hit him, but he caught it firmly in the air. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked sharply. "I'll take you to court. Don't forget, I'm a lawyer." Instead of calming down, Emma exploded in anger and threatened, "You think I don't have my own connections? You'll see." Michael remained indifferent to her threats, looking her straight in the eyes and calmly responding, "I'm at peace because I have God as my witness, and He sees everything. Justice will be served, Emma, you'll see." His words seemed to ignite even more fury in Emma, who, trembling with rage, replied with disdain, "Your religious sermons don't scare me, Michael. This isn't over. Get ready." With a calm, unshakable demeanor, Michael turned away and added as he walked out, "I'm not afraid because I know the truth always prevails. Mom deserves peace, and she will have it." Emma, breathing heavily and full of hatred, watched as Michael walked away, fully aware that the confrontation had only just begun, but also that her brother was more determined than ever. Michael took his mother by the arm and said with determination, "I'm going to pack some of your clothes. You're coming to live with us right now. Do you agree?" She, with tears in her eyes, nodded without hesitation, her heart filled with relief at feeling the protection and love of her son during these difficult moments. As Michael began to gather his mother's clothes, she stood at the door, watching with a mix of gratitude and sadness the house she had built with so much effort, but that Emma had turned into a prison for her. She didn't know what the future held, but she was sure that with her son, she would be in good hands. Michael, with a mix of sadness and determination in his eyes, turned to Emma one last time. With a voice that chilled his sister to the core, he said with conviction, "From today on, you are a stranger to me. I will seek justice. What you've done is unforgivable, and I'll see to it that you're behind bars without showing any mercy." He closed the front door. Despite his harsh words and decision not to pay for Emma's expenses anymore, Michael decided to let her stay in the house, which belonged to their mother. Deep down, he still recognized the family bond that united them, aware that Emma was still his sister and their mother's daughter, despite the harm she had caused. As Michael walked away, supporting his mother in helping her walk, his face reflected a mix of pain and determination, ready to protect his mother and seek justice for all the suffering she had endured. When they arrived at Michael's house, his wife, Sarah, greeted them with a warm hug. "Lana, dear, what a joy to have you here," said Michael's young wife with a beaming smile. Come in, come in. This is your home." With a genuine expression of happiness, Sarah quickly took Lana's bag of clothes and accompanied her to the guest room. Through tears, Lana thanked her son for rescuing her. "I wouldn't have been able to endure that torture one more day," she confessed with a broken voice. "Thank you for getting me out of there." "Everything will be all right now, Mom," Michael replied, gently squeezing her hand and kissing her on the cheek. "You're safe with us now." Lana, still sobbing, continued, "I'm worried about Emma's new boyfriend. I'm sure she'll make him suffer, and he seems like a good man." Michael, with a spark of determination in his eyes, responded, "We'll see if he stays free. I'll make sure Emma gets what she deserves. No one else will suffer because of her." Lana looked at him with gratitude and let out a final sigh of relief, feeling that she was finally beginning a new chapter of her life, surrounded by those who truly loved her. 3 weeks had passed since Lana was rescued from her own home. That morning, when Michael arrived at his office, the first thing he asked his secretary was, "How's the case against my sister going?" She replied, "The subpoena has been sent, and she'll be tried soon." "That's a relief. What she did to my mother cannot go unpunished." "Who's the judge?" Michael asked. The secretary, without looking up from her documents, responded, "It will be Judge Nora Castillo." Michael smiled at the mention of the judge's name. "She's a very good friend of mine," he said with a tone of relief. "We've resolved many cases together, and I know she's fair and honest. It's comforting to know she will bring justice for my mother." With a sigh of relief, Michael turned and entered his office, feeling that the moment of justice for Lana was drawing near. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. Michael did everything he could to present his case with unmatched meticulousness, emphasizing the family bond that united Lana and Emma as an aggravating factor for Emma's ruthless actions. Judge Nora Castillo, known for her impartiality and rigor, patiently listened to the arguments from both sides. After a brief recess to deliberate, Judge Castillo returned to the courtroom, ready to deliver her verdict. In a firm, cold voice, she announced her sentence. Emma was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay a $200,000 fine to Lana as compensation for the immense harm caused. The silence that followed was broken by a collective sigh of relief, as justice finally prevailed in this heartbreaking case. Michael felt a mix of satisfaction and tranquility, knowing that he had achieved what he had sought for so long, justice for his mother. As Emma listened to Judge Castillo's verdict, a mix of emotions flooded her being. Tears began to roll down her cheeks as she felt the weight of the sentence fall upon her. However, she also accepted the ruling with newfound dignity. The weeks she had spent away from her mother had given her time to reflect deeply on her actions and the harm she had caused. Before leaving the courtroom, Emma requested a moment to speak with Lana. With slow steps and her head bowed, she approached her mother, who received her with a serene yet sad expression. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Emma began, her voice breaking with emotion. "I don't understand how I could have hurt you so much, but I'm truly sorry. I consider my sentence fair, and I hope this time helps me make amends for my mistake." Lana, with the love and understanding that had always characterized her, took her daughter's face in her hands, kissed her on the forehead, and responded, "Thank you, dear. It means a lot to me that you can see your mistake. This time will help you reflect. Take care." Tears ran down both of their faces, mingling in a moment of deep connection and forgiveness. The courtroom, which had maintained an imposing silence during this brief interaction, bore witness to the power of repentance and reconciliation. The pain both felt was palpable, but so was the hope that this difficult chapter would finally guide them on a path toward healing and understanding. After the trial, Lana decided to sell the family home, which now only brought back memories of a past filled with pain and anguish. She believed that letting go of those walls steeped in bitter memories was a necessary step to close that chapter and move forward into a new life. The day Lana arrived at her son's house after the trial, she was greeted with a warm welcome. Her daughter-in-law, Sarah, knowing how difficult the entire process had been for her, had planned a special surprise. As Lana crossed the threshold, she noticed the small details that spoke of the care and love with which everything had been prepared for her. The aroma of her favorite meal filled the air, and on the dining table was a bouquet of fresh flowers with a card that simply said, "Welcome home, Grandma. We love you." Lana's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and gratitude as she embraced her family. Lana was deeply surprised when she learned that she was going to be a grandmother. Michael and Sarah had kept the news to themselves until the situation with Emma was resolved, and now was the perfect time to share this blessing. This news brought Lana such deep joy that it allowed her to leave behind the suffering of the past years. She felt reborn with the promise of new life on the way, and suddenly, all the difficulties and pain dissolved like clouds after a storm. Finally, Lana understood that life is full of ups and downs and that, even in the darkest moments, there is always an opportunity to find the light. The challenges she had faced had strengthened her and prepared her for this new stage of her life, surrounded by love and with the anticipation of a new member joining the family. With gratitude, Lana looked forward to the future, ready to embrace every new experience with a heart full of joy and serenity. Have you ever stopped to think about what you would have done if you were Michael? If you found yourself in his situation, watching your mother suffer for so many years, would you have acted the same way? I sincerely hope you enjoyed the story. I'm sure the next video that will appear on your screen will also move you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Big kisses, and see you in the next story.